seller's disclosure, whether it's in a condominium or homeowners association, and the HOA documents, and making sure that they're all ready. I mentioned earlier in the video series, I had a client whose purchase contract was sent to me. He lives up in the Panhandle, and he was a little upset about his agent. And I went through the contract, and he lives in a gated community, and they have a $570 a quarter HOA fee. And when I looked at his purchase contract, the addendum for the homeowners association wasn't checked off on the purchase contract, and there was no rider to the contract showing that it was there and how much it was on a quarterly basis, and that ultimately that would have been grounds for his buyer to cancel the purchase contract and potentially sue him for non-disclosure.
Right.
Having these disclosures filled out from the start, in my opinion, is essential. No listing should go live in MLS unless you have all of these disclosures MLS ready for a buyer's agent to download them and show them to their client.
Well, you think about it, a condo or a townhome goes onto the market. You show your buyers, they show interest. You know that it's just a couple of days on market, so you need to act quick. You go back to the office or the home, you write up the offer, and you click into the MLS and you're looking for the attachments, and there's nothing there. Now you got to get a hold of the listing agent to get the seller's disclosure, to get the condo docs, the HOA disclosure. And that's time. So that frustrates me a lot when I get to that point and I'm waiting on somebody else. And why I'm waiting, somebody else could be writing an offer as well. Mm-hmm. Plus, it just shows your client or your buyer that, hey, look, I've got everything for you to read at once, rather than here's the contract. Now here's the seller's disclosure. Now here's the HOA. There's just more and more information. If you can give it all to them at once, it's a much easier process.
The big one here is the seller's disclosure. In every home that you're going to buy, whether it's a single family home, a commercial property, a townhome, or a condo, there's going to be a seller's disclosure statement. And the only time we don't see those is if maybe the property was inherited and that new owner of that property doesn't know all of the details about it. So they oftentimes won't fill that out. But I would say 99.9% of the time, we're getting a seller's disclosure, or you're working with a seller and you're asking them to complete a seller's disclosure statement. And they'll get to certain points in the disclosure and they're like, oh, do I really want to mention that? We had a leak. Is that something we want to talk about? There's no evidence of the leak anymore. It's all been fixed. Is that something we should disclose? And what do you tell people?
Yes. If disclose, because if we get to the home inspection and the home inspector is able to find proof of that, or you're doing the home inspection and a neighbor stops by, oh yeah, Patty, she had a leak a couple of years ago. I remember there was a big deal over there, and that's not disclosed. It just makes for a messy deal. And most of these things there's workarounds. They were taken care of. There's receipts that show it. But in my opinion, full disclosure on those things. Why try to hide anything? Because to me, it's just going to kill your deal if you do that.
100% agree. The more information that I've discovered over the years, and again, back when I started selling real estate, the seller's disclosure statement was not something that was attached to MLS. It was something that you had to call and they then faxed it to you, or you had to drive to their office and pick up documents.
What's a fax, David?
A fax?
I'm just kidding.
Like a carrier pigeon. And what I've discovered is if there was no seller's disclosure statement and you make that offer, and then suddenly the seller's disclosure statement shows up within 3 days, because there used to be an addendum for that because you didn't have them attached online. And then the buyer starts reading through the seller's disclosure statement and they read that, oh, they had termites last year. Oh, and there was a leak 5 years ago that needed the flooring replaced, and they had to remove some drywall, and there was mold. Suddenly it's like, oh, I don't want this house now. They're using that as the reason not to move forward with a purchase. But I find when a buyer looks at a home, sees what it looks like today, they fall in love with it, they make that offer, and in the process of them getting ready to sign their offer, they're reviewing the seller's disclosure statement that says, hey, the home had termites last year and it was treated and it's under warranty with ABC company. Or there was a leak from the ice line in the refrigerator and they ended up having to replace the cabinets. or they had to replace some drywall, or there was a roof leak and the ceiling came down in the guest bedroom, and they hired ServPro to come in and they replaced the ceiling and they put new insulation in and everything was tested and it was done correctly. It's like, oh, there's nothing to worry about now. They seem to accept all of the bad news when they're excited and ready to make that offer. After, not so much. Now there's a problem. Now the trust has been taken off the table, and I don't believe the seller. And I think the agents now are trying to cover something up, and I want out of this deal.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling to do that home inspection, find a bunch of stuff that you can tell that the seller probably knew about, and now you're trying to explain that to the buyer, get the questions answered from the listing agent, from the seller. It just, that's not a good experience at all.
One thing that I find is quite interesting when I'm selling a townhome or a condo is the homeowners association documents. So if you're a seller and you own a townhome or a condo and you're thinking about putting your property on the market, go ahead now and get the most current homeowners association documents, the rules and regulations, the latest budget, the financials for the current year you're in, unless it's December time and you've got the new financials and budget for the next year. Go ahead and get those now. If not, what's going to happen is we're going to go under contract, and then it's going to be this rush to try and find these documents. And you're going to have to go online and order them, which is going to cost you a couple of $100s to get those documents because your association manager doesn't want to give you the set that they have. And now you've got to come out of pocket. So go ahead and get those documents in advance. Go ahead and order the minutes for the last 3 meetings so that you can show a buyer, hey, our association is in good shape. There's no assessments that are coming up. There's nothing that we're concerned about a roof being replaced and not having enough money for it, or the pool needs to be resurfaced and we need new pool furniture. Let's get all of that information together now so it's not something that's a stumbling block to deal with later.
Yeah, and that comes down to your agent giving you that advice, right? Like, these are really important things that could hold up a deal. And if you're the agent, know some of those things. Know what are the fees, what do they cover, what do they entail? Because I'm sure that you've been to an open house with a client, or you have a listing agent that accompanies your buyer. Immediately ask the question, what's the HOA, what does it cover? It's not that you need to know all the bylaws and the entire budget, but at least know those basics, and then you can turn over those documents and go, here, all the information's right here. There's nothing worse than that odd silence between a buyer's agent and a listing agent when the buyer asks the question and nobody knows the answer. Let's do a little research on that.
I see this all the time when I'm showing a condo, and maybe you're going to show 3 condos in the same building, and each agent has a different item that the HOA covers. And it's like, well, does it cover internet? Because this agent says it covers internet, but they say it doesn't cover water, sewer, garbage. This agent says it covers water, sewer, garbage, insurance, maintenance, property manager. And this one over here has a completely different list. And you've almost got to go back through all of the condos that have sold to be able to give your client, hey, this is what it really does cover. It does cover cable. It does cover basic internet. It does cover the water, sewer, garbage. It does cover the property manager and the insurance on the building. So it's so important to have all of that information correct from the start. And the only way to know that is to look at the budget, look exactly what's being covered, and fill out the MLS listing correctly, because you may lose a buyer because it doesn't have all of the information in. They look and say, wow, that HOA fee is $1,000 a month and it only covers water, sewer, garbage. Well, explain to a buyer what it really does cover. These associations aren't getting rich off of HOA fees. It's not a slush fund for their own personal use. It's going for the maintenance and repair and replacement of the building. And if things have been well maintained and they've planned, there shouldn't be a $10,000 assessment for a roof that needs to be replaced because the association didn't budget for it. And that gives some buyers trepidation when they're moving forward with a purchase if the association hasn't managed their budget very well.
Yeah.